Hi everyone, my name is Amy and I'm the production lead for Poverty, Philanthropy and Social Conditions in Victorian Britain. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of this resource today. So this resource introduces users to the interactions between government policy and public philanthropy in 19th and early 20th century society, demonstrating shifts in welfare reform and also the social tensions surrounding poverty and public welfare. This collection essentially offers a multifaceted insight into the practices and discourses of Victorian bureaucrats, philanthropists, and social reformers who aim to provide relief and support and an improved quality of life to the poor and marginalised communities of Britain. In line with this, one of the resource's editorial board members, Professor Seth Coven, beautifully describes the collection as offering a rich, multidimensional portrait of poverty in Victorian Britain. It wonderfully captures the intensity, breadth, creativity, heterogeneity, and passions of those engaged in grappling with poverty. So this multidimensional portrait has been created through three collections included in the resource. From the National Archives, we have digitised the correspondence and papers of assistant poor law commissioners and inspectors of the Poor Law Commission, Poor Law Board and Local Government Board. So these date from 1834, when the Poor Law Amendment Act was passed, through to 1904, and they document the difficult systematisation and administration of the new poor law across England and Wales. They include details of visits to designated poor law unions and workhouses, evaluations of workhouse conditions, and records of statistics on those receiving indoor or outdoor relief. From the British Library, we have a selection of periodicals and reports produced by a number of settlement houses, mostly based in London, in the late 19th and early 20th century. So university students and scholars would volunteer to live and work in settlement houses to provide education, culture, healthcare and recreational activities to the poor and marginalised communities in London's most deprived areas. So they were ultimately working to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. The periodicals that we have digitised from Toynbee Hall, the Bermondsey Settlement, Cambridge House and Oxford House, amongst others, document these efforts. From the Welfare Association Library Collection, which is housed at the Senate House Library, we have digitised a vast number of pamphlets, reports and printed books covering topics such as poor relief, education, foster care, public health, cooperative societies, socialism, trade unions and disability. These documents present the voices of key social, political and economic reformers and philanthropists such as Helen Bosanquet, Thomas Malthus, Edwin Chadwick, Louisa Twining, Charles Booth and Keir Hardie, to name a few. The Family Welfare Association, which was known as the Charity Organisation Society from 1869 to 1946, documented its own work as well as collecting material relating to poverty, welfare and social reform. The charity still exists today in its current form as Family Action. So some of the key themes covered across these three collections include the poor laws, workhouses and outdoor relief, sanitation, slums and housing, charitable organisations and friendly societies, manufacturing, technology and trade, social reform and welfare, education and children, race and immigration, health, medicine and disability, social order and discipline, and socialism and political movements. The resource has been produced with undergraduate students in mind, as well as researchers, and we've aimed to make this fantastic material as accessible as possible. Handwritten text recognition search technology has been applied to the correspondence and papers of poor law assistant commissioners and inspectors, digitised from the National Archives. Also included in the resource are some brilliant, unique essays and case studies written by members of our editorial board. So the essays offer some fascinating explorations of themes and documents in the resource, whilst the case studies are brilliant introductions to some of the key themes and topics of the material. We've also organised all of the documents included in this resource into thematic groups to help make them as discoverable as possible. And an interactive chronology sits the material in its broader historical context, covering legislation and reforms, political events and prime ministers, philanthropic movements, and general history as well. So more details, including a full contents list for the resource, can be found on the Adam Matthew website. Thank you very much for listening,